I'm Jillian, and I feel like today's mostly going to be from mom perspective because so much of these things are about holidays and routine, and so I don't even really feel like I'm an expert talking to people and teaching. I kind of feel like I want this to be a little bit more collaborative, and as I go through things, interrupt me, talk, share, because I think the more, often we all know all autistic kids are different, all autistic adults are different. So even as we're going through some of these things may not apply to your kid or your family member or the kids that you work with, and some of them might. So you may have ideas of things that you could add, and it also kind of depends on age and a lot of things. So this is just an overview. It's definitely not an all-inclusive list, but I definitely want this to be a little collaborative. So just toss things out as we're going, give examples. I'll probably give some examples as well. So I have a PowerPoint, and then it's kind of the same as the handout, but I'm going to be going off the handout. And then I also made just a little quick checklist for people as the holidays are coming up. So this is just a shorter version to kind of make sure that as you go through these things, it's things to keep in mind or you can give to your families that you work with. So I guess before we get started, how many people are actually from the perspective of you're a parent or family member of a child with autism, and then how many are more working with kids in different settings? So I guess an idea. Okay, perfect. Okay, I know, yeah. Okay, and you're both, yeah, okay. And I'm both as well. What about you? Perfect, okay, awesome. So that we have a lot of different perspectives here, and then I know there will be a lot of parents who are going to be watching this, and so maybe our conversations will kind of help them plan for holidays. So I really liked this topic because it's something that I think if you have any experience with kids with autism, you can relate to, that you go into holidays, you have really high expectations. I call it unhinged optimism. I tend to go into things with that over and over. And then you realize this didn't go how I thought it would. I probably could have anticipated this a little bit more, but you don't really know what to do in the moment because you're kind of in fight or flight. You're handling the crisis, you're handling the chaos. So I really liked this because it helped me too, and I'm going to implement some of these things. I was kind of learning along the way as I was putting this together as well. And I'm excited because I can use this with my clients at work too. So I definitely appreciate this opportunity because this will help me as well. So yeah, obviously holidays are happy, they're joyful. And sometimes I think sometimes parents are surprised. Why is my kid having a worse time right now? Aren't they grateful? Aren't they happy? There should be all of these wonderful things. But this will we're going to kind of go through first why the holidays are so difficult for children or adults on the autism spectrum. And then also what we can do to prepare them, and then what we can do during the event. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. So the first one is, why are the holidays so difficult for my child or family member with autism? So obviously the first one is sensory overload. I think that's a common thing that most people understand about autism, but it's kind of hard to understand unless you're feeling it. So if you think about any place that you go, whether it's Halloween, Thanksgiving, any Christmas events we go to, it's loud, it's bright, there's unfamiliar things, there's crowds sometimes, it can be a lot. So we're expecting our kid to come into this environment and be like, wow, look how beautiful, this is great. And they're immediately like, get me out of here. So that's a main reason, right? So even things that should feel joyful can really feel overwhelming and overstimulating. Disrupted routines. So I know for my child especially, routine is very important. So even something that I think is going to be really fun for him, it's disrupting his routine. It's disrupting his ability to know what's coming. And then even just staying up later, lack of sleep. I mean, there's so many things that are affected with that. Another aspect of it is social demands. So sometimes people have expectations of your kids, of what they should or shouldn't do at holidays, right? So family dynamics, social expectations, meeting lots of relatives, giving hugs, people asking you questions, people that you're not used to talking to, right? So that's really overwhelming for someone on the spectrum. I mean, it's overwhelming for me, but I think especially for them. So there's just expectations, and that can feel really uncomfortable. The next one is uncertainty or surprises. So not knowing exactly what will happen, even if it's something happy, like there's uncertainty with gifts. What kind of candy am I going to get? When will meals happen? What the day will look like? So again, it's things that we think, this is so much fun. But if you really start to look at all of these things, we can understand why this is such an out of proportion difficult time for people on the spectrum. So there's sudden changes or surprises that feels unsettling. So there's also pressure to join in or mask. This one may not apply to everyone, but I know especially for older kids and kids that maybe present more neurotypical sometimes, kind of tend to have more expectations to engage in neurotypical ways, and they internalize that pressure. So even if they're sitting, participating in the game, sitting at the table, wearing the costume, doing all the things, that kind of makes us sometimes forget that they may be having a really hard time. It's a little more obvious with the kids that are having a meltdown on the floor. You know, that'd be my kid. Like, okay, clearly he's having a hard time, right? But for the kid that's sitting there and internally they're like about to explode, that may not be what we're picking up on. So they feel that pressure to blend in or mask their differences, which is really draining, especially in extended social situations. Another one is travel stress. So a lot of times we travel for the holidays, there's long car rides, possibly airports. You're sleeping in a different bed. You're in a different environment all around. So that's another added thing that could be fun for us, but not so fun for these kids. Emotional intensity, I think, is a big one that we don't always think about, of just realizing even happy emotions can be really overwhelming in a large capacity. So nostalgia, even just the feeling of this feels familiar or emotional, that can kind of catch someone with autism by surprise, and that could instantly lead to a meltdown or a need for a break, because that flood of emotions it's too much. It's too much to process in that moment. And so especially if there's conflict, right? So this is if everything's going well. Imagine if there's a conflict, imagine if there's an argument, if there's a tense moment that they're observing even between family members, right? That happens a lot. We're traveling, we're rushing, we're trying to do these things. So on top of all of these other things they're processing, now they're like, oh, my family's fighting. Oh, they're, for a lot of people, they're a lot more sensitive and in tune with other people's emotions. So when you look at all of these things, it might start to click of, okay, I can see why this is so overwhelming. I can see why we may need to prepare more than we have been. And I'm going to start doing a little bit of a better job as well, because sometimes, especially with if you have an understanding of your child, you think, well, I'll just handle it in the moment. But this next section is going to be, how can we prepare for this? How can we get ahead of this? Section will help us have a little validity to being unhinged optimistic. So if we can do some of these things, it might make it more of a reality. So this is a big one. Keep routines where you can around some of the holidays. So if you know something's coming up, try to keep, or even during the season, try to stick to regular meal times, bedtime, daily rituals as much as possible. And if routines will change, let them know in advance. Obviously, again, that's kind of an age developmental, depending on how your child will interpret that information. But if they're able to understand that, for sure, try to give them a heads up. You can use visual supports, make a visual schedule that can either be pictures or words. And showing them what will happen each day. I know a lot of kids respond really well to having a little bit of predictability with that. And even just counting down the days on a calendar so they know when events are coming. Obviously, again, some kids won't be able to comprehend that, but some will, and it's a good thing to try. Even if you think they can't understand, if you've got a child that's non-speaking, they may understand more than you think. So just putting some of these things in practice can actually ease some anxiety, even if you're not sure how much they can comprehend. Sometimes if you need to practice or role play some things, I thought this was one I hadn't really thought of, but when I started asking some families and talking to different people and researching, and I've seen that this is actually a really helpful thing to do. We'll say hello, we'll eat dinner, then we'll play games. If there's a game that you're going to be playing, practice with them, practice opening presents, practice doing greetings, take turns. If there will be, practice taking turns. I know my kid doesn't do very well with that, so practicing that can be really helpful. So preparing for sensory needs, obviously, this is really helpful. So if you're traveling, pack these items, pack the headphones, pack the fidgets, their favorite toy, their blanket. If it's possible in advance, if you, say you're going to a relative's house or you're going somewhere, before anything even starts, you can make a safe space for your child to go to at the event so that they can take breaks when things get too loud or too busy. Obviously, this isn't always going to be possible, but if you have a predictable time, if you're going to someone's house, you're going even to an event where you can scope it out beforehand and just say, okay, this might be a good area that I can take them to. Give predictable choices. I really like this one. I like offering, do you want to sit at the table for 10 minutes or 5 minutes? Allow them to choose whether or not to join activities. They don't have to do everything. I think that's something y'all were just saying of, it's okay if we don't do everything. It's okay if we split up. If one parent or one caregiver or one family member goes with this one and then we do other things, that's okay. I think the biggest thing too is adjusting our expectations of how these things go. And when we can be a little more flexible, they can go a lot better. And yeah, talk to family members. So that's what you had just said. Yeah, is letting relatives know what helps your child feel comfortable. Let them know things to try to avoid. Not forcing hugs, allowing breaks, avoiding surprise touches. That's something that I think families really in the South have a hard time with. People really don't respond well to being told, hey, he doesn't have to kiss you if he doesn't want to, Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and that we expect more of children in general, but it almost seems like we even expect more of kids with autism. It's like maybe we're trying to prove a point or we're trying to make a connection. And sometimes, yeah, we even expect things that we wouldn't expect of adults. So that's a really good point. And maybe this is probably a tough conversation to have with family. Has anyone else have a difficult time with this part? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that it's really helpful if you can. And then sometimes, for me, sometimes it's just modeling. It's just, if I know, okay, some people can have this conversation and some can't. Sometimes it's just modeling. And hopefully, eventually, they'll get on board. And if not, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, give a different alternative that's more comfortable. That's really good. So the last one for preparation is planning for transitions. So like bring familiar snacks, pajamas, bedtime routines if you're traveling, allow downtime before and after these events so your child can reset. I think sometimes, if we're more prepared going into this, if you've got the set routine, you've got downtime before and after, and then you're actually preparing for the actual event or the actual time, we're still not going to prevent all of these things from happening. But I think the main thing we're doing when we do this is recognizing I'm not having an unrealistic expectation going into this. So when we can kind of actually sit and think, number one, what is causing my child to feel this way? So we went over that in the beginning. This makes sense. Okay, I can see why this would be a lot. We're going to be less frustrated with our kid. We're going to be less, maybe worried about what people think. So if you can kind of do some of these things in advance, it'll make the actual event a whole lot better for you, for your kid, for your family. Obviously, this is in a perfect world. These are the things that would make it all go really well. It may not, but at least we're kind of we're making it possible. Because if you don't do these things, we're not even giving it a chance to be successful. Some places are easier to accommodate than others. I think if you're going to a grandparent's house or a cousin's house, you can say, okay, this is a room we can set up and go to. Other places you go to, trick-or-treating, or you're going to, the Gulfport Christmas lights or whatever. Like those things we may not be able to do as much. One thing that I didn't put on here that I thought about after is having like a wagon or a stroller. I mean, even for your older kids, sometimes just having something where they don't have to walk the entire time. If they need a break, they can hide in their little safe space and they can be near you. That's a good one too. So if you want to scratch that in, you can. But that's one that we do that I just forgot to put on here. Okay, so the next one is going to be maybe a little bit of overlap, but this is more of what we do at the event to make sure that they're getting what they need. So just be their safe base. I think for a big one, it's going to be staying close to your child, letting them know that if they need you, you're there. For the kids who are able to comprehend this, have a little signal, have a little, they can come squeeze your hand, or they can give you a little look or pull on their ear or something that can say, I'm having a hard time. I think that's just a great skill in general for, as a therapist, that's something I really work on with kids and families, is recognizing the signs of when you're getting to that point and how to, this is obviously really advanced, but if that's the goal, right? The eventual goal is for them to recognize when they're getting to that point and be able to let you know, and for them to recognize that. So if your kid is capable of that, mine's not there yet, but if they are, then yeah.
Finding something to do.
That's a good point of being able to say, after this, you get to choose what we do. I like that. That's a really good one. Yeah, so it's a motivator. Yeah, I mean, we all operate off motivators. Parents used to get mad at me when I would say, "You want us to bribe our kids?" And I'm like, "Do you get paid for going to work? Do you get excited to eat a cookie after you've gone to the gym?" Like we all have operate on rewards and needing things that make us excited to get through something difficult. I don't think that's a bad thing to teach kids at all. So yeah, that's a really good one. Obviously looking for early signs of stress. I think sometimes at holiday gatherings, I've been guilty of it where it's like, okay, he's fine right now. So I'm gonna like engage with everyone and be whatever. But maybe having like one person, if it's not you, it doesn't always have to be you, but maybe a spouse, a aunt, uncle, a grandparent, whoever, who can kind of be like, hey, let me know if we're starting to see some of these things or if it's you looking out for it, because sometimes we don't notice until we hear the crash if something broke or the scream or the whatever, we don't realize ahead of time. But watching for those signs, for a lot of kids, it's covering your ears, pacing, getting quiet, withdrawing, and then you can step in gently at that point before the meltdown happens, offer a break. That's when you can use the calm space or a sensory tool. Then that's where, if you're able to, you've prepped the calm space ahead of time, or you've kind of seen if that's possible, that's when you can direct them to that calm space. So you set up a little quiet place with headphones, a blanket, a favorite toy, and let your kid know it's okay to step away and recharge at any time. You understand that these are really high demands on them and that it's okay to step away. It's okay to need to reset. I think if you have anyone that will maybe be on board, but you also kind of want to let it be letting them learn and understand your child and understanding that these things are difficult, and they can kind of be a part of that and recognize, okay, this isn't so bad. That's something that I also meant to put in and forgot, was that if you don't have the ability to make a calm place, for my child, it's our vehicle. It's Mamo's truck. He loves Mamo's truck. So it's going to be, let's go to Momo's truck. Like, because if you can't set it up, but sometimes we'll just go sit out there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, we'll come back. So just because you may not be able to facilitate it in the building, having an alternative, even if it's just your car. But yeah, I definitely relate to that one, especially because, I've noticed my son, as soon as if he came in here, he'd be scanning. And if there was not a place where he could go, he'd be out of here. But if he sees, that's why he loves your classroom so much, because he's got that space that he can go to. So I think that just really highlighted for me, wow, like he immediately, as soon as he steps into this environment, he knows he needs that, like within 2 seconds. Yeah, it's great. And he sees it. And if he's got it, he's fine. If he doesn't, let's go home. Right. So, kind of creating that. Yeah. Okay. That's smart. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's great too, of, bringing something that you can just pop up. So if the space doesn't have it, yeah, like my son has a little dinosaur tent that Mom got him, and it works. And we could bring that places, just for him to have his little space to hide from people if he needs to, or get a little quiet space. And that's where you could put their comfort items and their sensory needs and all of that. So there's the ways to accommodate it, even if you're like, oh gosh, this is not going to be good. And like I said, if you're going somewhere, bring a wagon, bring a stroller. They make strollers for larger kids, but if you don't have that, get one of those things that you can pull. Because I think that's a big issue for a lot of kids, is their limbs get tired faster. They just get really exhausted. And so they need that. They want to still be there maybe, but they're done walking. So if you have that alternative, that might be good. Exactly. And that's like, so managing sensory input, like one of those things is bring an extra change of clothes. Like take the picture, bring the change of clothes. And then if, they're not going to strip down, they still might strip down to their underwear, but at least you have a comfortable option that might be a little more, like, because like you're saying, when they're ready to leave, it may just be that they're uncomfortable. So if we can remember, okay, if I can offer all of these things, we might actually last a little bit longer at this place. So yeah, so that's when you even offer sunglasses if kids, can wear those, comfy clothes, anything that's can, even getting like, I like the idea of a little pop-up tent, because that can get away from the brightness, something that can just kind of manage all of the sensory overload that they're getting. Yeah, that could be a little calm place. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And I really saw this. We love going to Disney World, and so you would think, people ask me, how does he do in Disney World? Because they see how he is in every other setting. They're like, how can he handle that? I'm like, well, he's got his little cocoon. He's got his little stroller. He does it all the way back. And we put the top up, and we'll put something over it, depending on what phase your kid's in. I think, for me, we've got phases. Like, For a while, he was biting the towels and ripping them up, or, biting on his shirt and getting everything wet. Right now he's throwing everything. So, I think it's just, if you know what phase your kid's in, you can kind of also predict, okay, this might be an issue when we go here. So it's obviously, we can't put on a list all of those things, but just being mindful before you go to something of, okay, this is something I know will probably be an issue. I'm going to, for my son too, he will pour everyone's drinks out right now for whatever reason. So I try to tell people, hey, put your drinks towards the edge and he won't touch it. But if he feels like it's out of place, it's not that he wants to spill your drink. He just doesn't want it there. He's like a cat. So yeah, I think he just needs it gone. So that's something, going into events, we'll kind of say, oh, I'll just move people's drinks for them if they can't find it. Oh, well, but they'd rather look for it than have it be spilled on the floor. If you're in a climbing phase, but sounds like you've got all the phases at one time. So, but yeah, just knowing your kid, knowing what to expect. And that's another thing you can tell family about ahead of time, or, just try to anticipate and normalize it a little bit. So the other one was giving clear expectations, like what we talked about, but actually doing that in the moment at the event. So really letting them know you prepped them, but then we're going to break it down even further while we're here of, hey, this is when everyone's going to be sitting at the table. You can either sit here, or you can take yours over here, or hey, we're going to open presents in 10 minutes. Things like that, just so that they know. For some kids, they might need a timer or visuals to show when things are starting and finishing. I think mine would probably do better with that than maybe me just telling him if he's not fully paying attention to what I'm saying, but kind of like, okay, it's starting, okay, it's ending. And then obviously, letting them not participate in those things in the moment. If it's something that they said they would do and then they change their mind, that's okay. Respecting their comfort zone with that. We talked about not forcing hugs, not forcing participation, and praise them for trying. So even if maybe they tried and then you see that they left, or you see that they said, oh, I'm not doing this or whatever, don't scold them for, hey, you agreed to this. Tell them, hey, that was a great job for trying that. And so that will kind of give them that reinforcement to try things in the future that are maybe uncomfortable, that they realize I wasn't in trouble for doing this and not finishing it. So definitely trying to just really build them up and let them know your effort is seen, even if they don't try, even if they just participate, they agree to go, and they don't do any of it. Like you said, hey, you did so awesome. After this, we are going to go do something you want to do. We're going to go get Taco Bell, or for me, it's Burger King fries, whatever it is. And then the other one, obviously, we talked about was ahead of time of making sure they know that they can have downtime. So actually working that into the schedule, instead of it being like, we're going to be here for 6 hours, hope you enjoy it, actually letting them know, hey, we're going to go have a break after this. You can even go for a walk. You can take a minute to just go in a separate room with them, just you and your child, and that will probably help a lot. So I think it's just, ultimately, it's making sure that you know what your kid needs, and knowing it is okay if it doesn't go exactly how I had imagined, right? Because I think when we all have kids, we all imagine how these things are going to go. You don't expect to have to be sitting in a room talking about these things even. You don't expect that. But it doesn't have to be either it's exactly how you envisioned it, or we don't do it at all, or it's a disaster. We can kind of have some balance of these things and adjust your expectations. For me, I choose to not have expectations the majority of the time. And sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised of like, wow, that went so good. And sometimes I'm like, well, that's not the one we should have done, right? But that's okay. It's okay. And I think having people who you can relate to, having people who you can sit in a room and talk about this with is actually helpful, even though none of us maybe thought this is what we'd be doing on a Thursday night. It's really nice to have people who can relate and have these things. And there's a lot of professionals who can help. Like there's ABA, there's therapy, there's occupational therapy, there's speech, there's all these different resources that can help plan for these things too. So if your kid is in any of those, or if you work with those, definitely talk about the holidays, talk about how to prepare for some of these things, because they may have other ideas, or they may be able to support your child when they're working with them as well. And I think that's it. Does anybody have anything to add?
Would you like to give her? Would you like to give her feelings?
For me, I thought it was for her. I was like, I can't wait to see what she's gonna open.
But thank you so much, and just keep it moving.